All right, so hopefully you guys can see my screen here. Yell at me if you can't, but I'm at the GitHub Papa Platoon page. All right, so this should be your central resource for checking out the curriculum and finding any challenge that you are looking to complete. So I'm gonna give you an overview here, make sure everyone understands how we kind of operate here. First and foremost, all of you guys should be a member of this organization. So if I check people, all you guys should be in this list. If you've not gotten the invite or for some reason are not part of this GitHub organization, definitely Slack myself and Tom, and we'll make sure you get invited ASAP. Is anyone not in this organization? I'll just ask straight up.
Yeah, I'm not. I got the link and I clicked it, and it for some reason I just kept going to a 404. Wouldn't let me.
Okay, what's your GitHub username?
DGNSREKT.
Okay, let's see if you're in pending. All right, I see you in pending. Let me send the invite again. So bear with me for a moment. All right, I'm gonna try sending it one more time. If you don't get it, I would say check your spam folder. Sometimes you can sneak in there. So can you give me your name again?
DGNSREKT.
DGNS.
SREKT. REKT. There we go.
Gotcha. Okay, sending that now. Hopefully it shows up somewhere in your email. But okay, thanks for alerting me. Anyone else missing that invite? I could try sending it again if you've not gotten it.
Also notice that I'm on the pending list as well. There I am with the Mario. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll try sending that again. Again, it might be in your spam. If it doesn't work, I'll try sending it directly to your email. But we do want to get you in here. All right, canceling that invite. Anyone else missing? Okay.
What was the solution to the 404 issue?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming that these members did not accept the invite. So therefore, if you try to go to this organization without the accepting the invite, you'll probably get a 404 because it will block your access. So hopefully Jason and was it Kevin? Hopefully they get the invite and able to join. But for most of you, you guys should have access to Papa Platoon. So the main repository that we're going to focus on is the curriculum, because that is the curriculum. So I'm going to click on that. If you guys want to follow along, you guys are welcome to try to follow along. I'll try not to go too quickly, but I might kind of speed up here and there. So our curriculum is kind of divided up into weeks. And then within the weeks, we have particular days. So week 1, we have October 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th for Monday through Friday of this week. It does appear that we have 16 weeks, but again, we do have a holiday break in between, I think, week 12 and 13. So that covers, Christmas time. I think from the 23rd to the 3rd, we have time off for the end of the year holidays. So it is a 14-week curriculum, but a few extra holidays kind of lengthen the schedule. All right, so let's kind of just go over the main things I want to point out here. So on the main README page for the curriculum repository, you should see this welcome message. You can read at your leisure. The main thing I want to focus on is A, this diagram here, and then 2, we'll talk about the curriculum calendar. So this is a full stack web development bootcamp. You're going to be learning all these technologies that are displayed here. So hopefully you guys got some, some refresher, or not refresher, but some introductory knowledge of JavaScript with your pre-work. This first week, we're going to be focusing on learning basic JavaScript and basic Python. So I know a lot of you guys may not have worked with Python before. That's totally okay. The important thing is if you understand the concepts in JavaScript, as in like writing if statements, for loops, creating functions, variables, all that good stuff, it's going to be pretty easy to learn Python. The only challenge will be learning the syntax of Python. Else, everything else more or less is similar, if not exactly the same in JavaScript and Python. There are a few differences, but for the most part, the basic concept should be the same. Week 2 is going to focus more on Python, specifically OOP. Does anyone know what OOP stands for?
Object-oriented programming.
Object-oriented, yeah.
Yep, I think Kevin beat you to it, but yep, it seems like some of you guys know that lingo. So OOP stands for object-oriented programming. This is probably one of the hardest topics that our students have to digest. It is a popular concept covered in software development. A lot of employers will look for it, or at least some basic knowledge of OOP, so that is why we cover it. So that'll be week 2, focusing on OOP. Week 3 will be more of a miscellaneous, kind of covering other topics. Let me just go to the curriculum calendar. I think a little easier, I think, to talk about it. So yeah, if you click on the calendar from our main page, it'll kind of breaks down each day and tells you what we're going to cover. So week 1, JavaScript, Python intro, as mentioned. Week 2, we're going to focus on object-oriented programming. As I mentioned, this is probably one of the hardest weeks in terms of just material. It gets kind of theoretical, but again, it comes early, but hopefully you guys are able to get through it. Week 3, it's more focused on data structure and algorithms. So we talk about such things as recursion, regular expressions, talking about algorithmic complexity, data structures. So you might be familiar with, regex. Some of you guys definitely were using regex for your pre-work challenges. So that's good to see. Recursion, another popular algorithm topic. So that'll be week 3's focus. Notice that we're going to have some assessments coming up. So highlighted in whatever shade of purple or pink. You'll have your first assessment 2 Fridays from now. So not this Friday, but next Friday. We'll talk more about the assessment as it approaches, but it is going to come quick. After our first 3 weeks, again, I will say, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, the first 3 weeks can be a kind of overwhelming, both because, again, you guys are getting adjusted to our pace and our cadence. Also, there's a lot of coding challenges we send your way. And again, the pace of material, or the amount of material and the pace we go through can be kind of quick. So try to keep your head afloat. Again, we'll work with you, but just know that the first 3 weeks take a bit adjusting and can be kind of overwhelming for some students. After the first 3 weeks, we kind of change gears a little bit. We have a week of HTML and CSS. So this is more just front-end web development, creating a web page, understanding how CSS, HTML works, also how JavaScript kind of comes into play, therefore making your web pages more dynamic. Week 5, we'll kind of switch gears completely. So if you guys are familiar with front end versus back end, front end talks about what the client sees or what your user sees, and that's going to be a web page usually, and what to interact with. The back end is where you store your data, your application data. And that's going to be in databases. We're going to talk about SQL, which is a language working with databases, and kind of just giving introductory into working with databases. So that's week 5. So week 4, front end, week 5, back end. Week 6 and 7, we're going to dive into Django. So Django is a framework that we use that kind of makes it easier to create a back end and front end from scratch to get a website up and running. You can totally get by without knowing Django, but Django just makes our lives all that much easier. So we'll have 2 full weeks of Django, an introductory week, and then kind of getting to a little more heavier topics using Django. But that'll be 2 full weeks, and we'll have a Django assessment at the end of week 7. And then the final new topic is going to be React. That's going to start in week 8, continue on to week 9, and kind of tie up in week 10. React is probably my favorite technology or language that we teach. I like front-end development. React kind of just makes sense to me. I think it's really cool how it works. So hopefully you guys are kind of excited about it.
Thank you. Okay.
With that said, again, not to scare anyone, React usually is one of the hardest topics for students to kind of understand and get under their feet. So as I say, week 2, kind of keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a tough week for some students just because the material is really, really kind of tough to digest and understand. And then also React can be tough to kind of adjust to because it's kind of like a different way to program that it's not exactly similar to what we've done before. On the final week, week 10, is our full stack development week. That's where we basically take everything we've done for the past 9 weeks and tie it all together so that we create like an actual application from start to finish. Once we finish week 10, we'll have an assessment that you will work on, which is your personal project. This is where you guys actually get to, like, I would say your personal project. And then after that, we have a final group project. This might sound odd, but like that is where the majority of your learning will come to play. As in, you will do some challenges here and there, we'll have some small projects, but this is where you're kind of on your own, creating your own project based on your own interests, kind of using all the material that we've talked about. Obviously, we're going to be here to help you, but actually applying all the concepts, all the languages, all the frameworks to an actual project is, I believe, how our students learn best. So that's what the final few weeks will be, a personal project. We'll have our holiday break. We do have class on Tuesday, December 28th. We'll get more details too. There's a specific reason we're going to have class that day. but please don't be too worried about it breaking up your holiday too much. We'll talk more about it later. The final 3 weeks will be group projects and then graduation. So that's an overview of our curriculum. Again, this diagram kind of shows you the pieces you'll be learning. So again, the first few weeks are going to be focused on these 4 blocks: JavaScript on OOP, first 2 weeks, algorithms, data structures, which is going to be more Python focused, week 3. Week 4 will be HTML, CSS, and creating a vanilla front-end web page. Week 5 will be SQL and Postgres. Week 6 will be Django and the Django RM. Week 8 and 9 will be React, and then week 10 is basically tying it all together. Any questions that might have crept up from all the talking I just did? I'm not sure if there's a question out there, but your mic might have been muted.
Yeah, he's got a question. He's connecting to his phone.
Okay. I'm not sure if I was able to hear Ty, but Daniel, are you able to relay his question by any chance?
What was your question?
The image for the full stack chart is broken.
Yeah, the full stack development chart, the one that you're on right now, I think it's broken. It's not working for me.
It's a different repository than the one we're actually in.
I think you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for reporting that. So if you do find a broken link, that's definitely something we want to fix. So I can fix that right now because I know what the issue is. Anywhere you see Platoon-new, if you see that, that's a mistake. It should be Platoon. So I'll fix that one right now, but there might be a few other booby traps out there. So sorry about that. If you refresh your page, hopefully that diagram is visible to all of you guys now. I'll refresh mine just in case. All right, thanks for reporting that. Hopefully it's fixed now. Any other questions out there?
Yeah, it works. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's continue.
You muted
You're
yourself.
muted.
Thank you. So we break it down by week and day. So if I go to week 1, which is what we're starting, if I go to October 4th, this is the material we've been covering for today. So most of today is just talking about installation and covering the command line and VS Code. So that's what we'll be doing this afternoon. So we're going to walk through most of this, especially this InstallFest for Mac OS. If you are on Windows or Ubuntu, you can follow these tutorials. I've never run through the Cloud9 setup, but I've heard it's pretty straightforward. So you guys can give that a try. If you're on Windows, you do have the option. You could install the Cloud9 setup, or kind of just install all the applications we talk about on your own and work from a Windows environment. This Cloud9 setup kind of lets you simulate a Mac environment within your Windows environment. It's kind of a Docker setup, so you can kind of work as if you're on a Mac, but still be on your Windows machine. If you don't want that, again, you have the option. Again, I'm not run through the Ubuntu setup, but hopefully all of this works for you guys. So again, we're going to go through this page, and this is today's content. At the very bottom of each day's page, you'll see the assignments. So here today, we're going to have 2 assignments for you. A third is just reading, but every day we'll have assignments for you guys to attempt and get through. Since we're talking about assignments, I'll reiterate this later on. We expect or hope that you guys attempt all the challenges, but with that said, sometimes it might not be feasible just because we have a lot of challenges. Like if I actually go to, I think tomorrow, October 5th, I scroll all the way to the bottom. Yeah, like we have 5 challenges, which could be a lot. Again, depends. Some of you guys might get through them pretty quickly. Some of you guys might, take a couple hours on just one of them. Totally fine. Do your best. Don't overstress and don't overdo it. So should you be up till 3 a.m., tomorrow night working on these challenges? I would say no. Sleep is important. Should you call it a day at 5:30 if you only finish one challenge? I would say no. Probably put in a few more hours, try to attempt at least a few more challenges. You guys kind of get it. I'm not going to belabor the point, but just put in your due diligence. Try to attempt all the challenges if you can. Complete them if you can, but don't stress out about them.
Ankur, I have a quick question.
Go for it.
I don't know if I can just hijack your conversation,
No,
but
absolutely. I welcome questions, so go for it.
what I've been doing has just been like commenting them out on like Replit. Is there a specific place you want us to hold these challenges?
Great question. I will actually cover that in a bit. So if I don't answer that question by the end of today, I guess, definitely yell at me and remind me at stand down. Great question. There is a process we have. But since we're talking about challenges, I will probably say all this again. Don't stress out about them, but don't slap at them. This is how you're going to learn the material the best. We do not grade challenges, but we do kind of intermittently check that students are submitting them. So if we notice like, hey, this person's not turning an assignment in the last entire week, we're probably going to ping you like, hey, what's going on? You know, how can we help? Want to make sure that you're actually doing, attempting them, even if you're not able to get through them. So those are challenges. Again, that's for tomorrow. We were on today. So let's kind of just get started with today. Any questions before I proceed with today's material about how we structure our curriculum? I would say best advice, probably bookmark this page or this repository somewhere up here. I've bookmarked it up here with my other bookmarks because you'd be probably referencing this quite often. But just make sure you can access it. So we talked about the curriculum calendar, kind of overview of our program. We talked about Slack earlier, so if you want to reread it, definitely make sure you understand how we use Slack. This should say Papa, not Oscar. But as we talked about, post your questions in Papa. So I guess I should fix that too. There it is. It's hard to edit these large files. It should be Papa. I'll just double check all these pages now. But you guys kind of get the deal. Do you guys have any questions about that channel that we talked about? Papa questions? Was anything unclear? Do you understand the process? Remember the 3 before me rule? So make sure you understand what the error is telling you. Make sure you do a due diligence on Google. Make sure you try to find the answer. Usually Stack Overflow has, most of the time, from my experience, will have someone encounter that error and someone has a good response to it. If you can't find the solution online, ping one of your fellow students and get to know them to say, hey, Guillermo, I'm stuck on this issue. How's your day going? Can you, do you happen to know how to fix this? Guillermo's like, I actually don't know. It's totally fine. Then try to reach out in the Papa question channel and TAs or instructors will try to reach out and help you out. Okay, so if you have any other questions about Slack, definitely ask, but we went over that this morning. Just make sure you understand how to use it. Reply in threads. Don't kind of continue conversations outside of threads if you can avoid it. And yeah, that's and then also messaging, alerting people. As we mentioned, don't use at here or at channel because that's kind of noisy unless you really have to. For the most part, you should be able to get in contact with whoever you're trying to talk to. All right, so there's this part about submitting work for review. We're going to cover this later, but this should answer Guillermo's question. But we'll touch on that in a bit. So stay tuned. All right, for now, I'm going to go to today's material, which is week 1, day 1, which is October 4th. All right, let's take a look. So today, by the end of today, you should kind of have an understanding of how to use VS Code and how to interact with the command line. Chad's going to be giving a presentation about that once I'm finished with InstallFest, so stay tuned. He has a great presentation for that. So these are our objectives. Again, all of our daily pages are kind of outlined this way, talking about topics, the goals for the day, and then the main lesson. So command line, we'll get back to that. But let's talk about the setup. So hopefully all of you guys by now have installed Slack. I assume you have since you guys are active on there. If you've not downloaded it to your machine, you could run it off the web, but I'd recommend downloading the application to your computer and then running it off your machine instead of online. I think you get more features and probably performs better. Same thing with Zoom. Again, Zoom, you could use the web client, but I'd recommend just downloading the desktop client and using it on your personal device. Any questions about Slack or Zoom? Okay, as we mentioned, we talked about the Zoom rules also. To be presentable, don't have distractions on your screen, nothing offensive. Make sure you're wearing clothes and we're remote, but we're still in a classroom setting. But yeah, just use your, use your discretion. Please have your cameras on when possible. Please mute yourself at all times unless when you're asking a question or in a discussion or providing feedback or whatever it may be. All right, the last thing on here is Operation Code. This is an excellent resource that we highly recommend that you guys sign up for. This just provides support, additional support for your coding woes, I guess. So when you get a moment, sign up with your email, password. You guys know the drill to sign up. But again, this is a military specific service where it's just going to network within Slack. So again, another additional resource on top of all the resources we talked about, being mentors, giving TAs, instructors, TAs, and staff. Just another group that can kind of support you along your journey here. So yeah, whenever you get a chance, definitely recommend signing up for Operation Code. And that link is provided from our main page. All right, so if you've not done so yet, I'd say do that when you have a moment. I'm going to proceed to the Mac setup and kind of go through these steps. Definitely encourage you guys to follow along. You might fall behind. I'm going to definitely pause and allow time for catch up. But it's okay if you guys don't kind of keep up. We will have this lecture recorded so you guys can kind of follow it at your leisure. But first things first, make sure you have an Apple ID. I assume for anyone on a Mac, you probably have an Apple ID created at some point. I mentioned this in my email and my message, I think on Friday or Saturday when I sent that out, to download and install Xcode. That is a huge installation. I think last time I checked on my machine, it was like a 30 gigabit file, folder, whatever. So hopefully you guys are done with that. If not, you'll have to do that at some point. But we're not going to pause for that here because it can take a long time. All right, so ensure that your OS is up to date. I actually just updated my OS yesterday because there was a pending update, but you should be able to get that update going by going through system preferences. If I go click on the Apple system preferences, let's see, software updates. Software updates, I should be up to date because I just literally installed last night. Check for updates, good, I'm good to go. I'm on Big Sur 11.6. Make sure your OS is up to date whenever you get a chance. Let's get into actually installing applications we're going to be using. So first up is VS Code. One thing I want to mention, since there's a separate link for it, if you're on an M1 chip, you might have to download a different version. So just be aware if you have an M1 chip or not. I do not, so I'm going to click VS Code, open this up, and I'm just going to go through the process. So I am not on Windows, but if you are, you probably want the Windows installation. I'm on a Mac, so I'll click Mac, let that download. Yes, save that file. Shouldn't take too long, so that pie chart is filling up. So VS Code is what we call an IDE. This is what you'll be using for writing all your code. VS Code is an excellent IDE. I think IDE stands for Integrated Developer. What does IDE stand for?
Integrated Developer Environment.
There you go. Thank you for that. But yeah, so VS Code is an excellent free application that Microsoft has developed. It is very extensible. You can go in many different languages in it. The cool thing about it is you could add extensions that other people developed to kind of add new features to your development process. So VS Code, I'm a huge fan of it. You can use other IDEs. There's plenty of IDEs out there. I do not have any to recommend because I am kind of in love with VS Code. If you want to use a different developer or IDE, I would say probably stick with VS Code just because it's very capable and that's what we use. So if you're on a different IDE, you might have different shortcuts or not be able to do exactly what we're trying to do. But at the end of the day, you're the developer, so you should decide what works best for you. But again, I would highly, highly, highly recommend using VS Code and not worrying about any other IDE. So my download should have completed. Yep, let's find it somewhere. All right, my downloads, I guess I'm going to folder here. So here are my downloads. Looks like I've downloaded twice. Let me delete this one. All right, so now that I downloaded it, what I'm going to do is double click it. So it'll unzip the file that I got. It'll toss this application, so Visual Studio Code.app. For a Mac, you need to take it and drag it to your applications folder. So I'm taking it from my downloads folder, putting it in my applications folder. All right, notice it moved. If I go to my applications, I should find Visual Studio Code. There it is. All right, I'm not sure why it has this date on it, because I just did it, but whenever you download it, you need to move to your applications folder on a Mac. On Windows, I know it's a little different. You can just run the installer and it'll put in your program files, but you guys can deal with that. All right, so VS Code looks like it's there. Great. Let's go back to InstallFest. That's done. All right, so I can check this off. I'll run it, make sure it works in a bit. iTerm, that's the next thing I want to install. So I'm going to right click it, do a simple download. So again, I am on Mac OS. I want the stable release. So test releases might have newer features, but there might be bugs in them. So I always go for the stable release unless I really need a new feature. So I'm going to download that. That should be pretty quick. There you go. All right, so if I go back to my downloads, there it is. Looks like I did this twice again. Okay, so I got my iTerm app again, like before. I need to drag it to my applications folder, so I'll toss it in there. And I think I saw it move. There you go. So iTerm is in there. All right, cool. I'm gonna pause for just like 30 seconds in case anyone's trying to catch up. But what we accomplished was installing VS Code and iTerm. Again, if you're on an M1 chip, you might have a different VS Code installation, but we should be good to go with those two pieces. All right, so I'm actually going to use iTerm now. And let me close some tabs here. Okay, so with your Mac, if you do Command Spacebar, you should have a terminal app built in. This is the default terminal that Mac OS uses. It's going to be a window like this. But since we installed iTerm, that's what we prefer for whatever reason. So I'm going to click iTerm app, open. All right, you should see a window like this if your application installed correctly. I do have some errors here for this notification. I think I got a step ahead, but let me blow this up a little bit. All right, so at the top of your window, most likely you're going to see, I have -bash. You're probably going to see ZSH up there. So I think I got a step ahead here. But following the steps we have on our InstallFest, so if I go here, first thing I'm going to do is install Xcode commands. I've already done this, but if you've not done this, you need to copy this. And one thing to note, anytime you see this $, that just represents the prompt in your terminal. So you don't actually run this $, as part of your command. So I'm going to copy everything except the $, and I guess except the space and the $, here. So if I copy Xcode select -- install, I'm going to copy that, put it into my terminal here. So again, this is the command. This $, and everything before it is just my prompt. Okay, so if I run this, I'm probably going to get a notification saying it's installed already. Yep, so it looks like I've already installed it, but if you've not installed it, this should go through some installation process. And I'll pause, I'm not sure how long that'll take. Is anyone running it for the first time? And if so, does it take a long time to install?
It's about halfway done, started about a minute and a half ago.
Great, all right, Seth, thanks for the update. Okay, guess I'll pause for a minute and kind of scan what else we need to do. So you guys should be installing this, if you haven't done that already. Next up, we're gonna install this code to our path. That's gonna involve using VS Code. So I guess you could let that run. I don't think that should interfere with anything right now. Hopefully it's installed, but next thing I'm gonna do is type in the word, I'm gonna launch my VS Code. So to do that, let's find my applications. I'm gonna double click on VS Code, and that should pop up the VS Code window. Yep. There we go. Yep, since this is the first time I installed it, it's asking me, do I actually want to open it? And yes, I think it's a safe application. And it pops up a VS Code window on my other screen. So let me make that visible. Okay, so this is my VS Code window that popped up when I launched the application. Okay, so there's nothing I'm going to really do right now in this file. What I want to do, I'm going to follow directions. So sorry for all this screen sliding. Give me 1 moment. Okay, so following directions here. This is a command, yada, yada, yada. So let's follow directions. I'm going to open this link. All right, so I clicked on this link, popped open a new tab. Basically, what we're going to do is follow the steps from here to here. And what we're doing is installing this code into our system path. So VS Code will handle that for us if we follow the directions here. So the first thing we want to do, launch VS Code. That's done. Second thing is we want to open the command palette. So to do that, you want to do Command-Shift-P. So that's Command-Shift-P. That should bring up a dropdown in your VS Code, like it did for me. You guys following along here? All right, in that, I'm going to type shell command. And then notice it just filters the results for me. So there's 2 shell command results. One is install code command in path. The other is uninstall code command in path. So if I actually go back to my window here, before doing anything, if I type code, it's going to pop that up. All right, so really have installed. All right, so sorry, I'm going to do Command-Shift-P again, type in shell command. All right, so to have code run from your terminal, you need to install it. So I've already done that before, but if I click that, all right, you should get a message like this saying shell command code successfully installed in path. All right, so it's just a couple of clicks. Once you've done that, you should restart your terminal. So let me just exit out of here. Quit iTerm, yes, get out of there. Let's bring that back up. So I'm going to do one space, iTerm. At this point, since I'm using it often enough, I'm going to pin it in my doc. Okay, so after you did those steps, you should be able to run code. And if you put, I guess, period here, it'll open this folder, this file path in your folder. So here, notice I have Code Platoon as my root folder because I was in my Code Platoon folder when I opened up VS Code. So if you did all the steps correctly, VS Code should now be launchable via the code command.
I have a question.
Yep.
So should I have created a folder and then open VS Code and kind of designated that folder for everything to fall into?
You didn't have to for this step. I just opened it wherever I was. Normally when you're creating a project, you want to create a folder for it first and then open VS Code within that folder. So we'll talk about that when we're going through a challenge. But for now, I just want to test out that VS Code is working for my command.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you. So in VS Code, I followed the steps, and when I clicked installed, it said that it's already installed. So right now I'm in the iTerm and I did the code, the period, but it says that ZSH command not found. Do you know
Gotcha.
what I may have done?
Yep. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's make sure I didn't skip a step, which I easily could have done. So we have that. Okay, so Jonathan, let's try getting bash running and maybe that will solve it. And if not, we might need to work one-on-one here. So we should have done the code part. Let's get bash as our default shell. So as I mentioned, when I brought up my iTerm here, I have -bash here because I kind of set that up ahead of time. A lot of you guys probably have ZSH at the top here. Both of them are just different shells that work with this terminal. We prefer bash for whatever reason. That's just what we agree upon. So we recommend that you switch over to bash. So following those steps here, if you copy, so under the bash section, copy this command. And I should mention at this point, it's okay if you don't fully understand all the commands that we're copying over. We're just trying to get everything up and running. Again, we're not expecting you to know what this command is particularly doing. We just want to make sure that we're able to get our environment up and running. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it into my terminal here. And then it might ask you for a password. So I'll type in my super secret password here. All right, so I got no changes made because I was already on bash, but I bet if I did something like ZSH, Okay, so I switched mine to ZHS. So if I open up a new terminal. Yeah, so notice that now my default is using ZSH. I know there's a better way to say it. I'm not sure of the terminology there, but I don't want to use ZSH. So instead, I'm going to run this command again. So again, I copy this from our install page. So and nothing that you need to come up with here on your own. It's chsh-s and then bin bash. All right, so if I run that, again, password. Okay, so it looks like it changed it over. So Chad's going to go over this more in detail, but if you don't see an error message in your terminal, that's actually a good thing. So nothing, I got no error message here. That usually means a good thing happened. All right, so in bash now. So if I close this again, open up a new window, notice that I get bash. So bash is my default shell right now. You might see this error message, which was seeing recently, so I actually put in a blurb for that. If you're seeing this, you can add this command into your bash profile, and we'll talk about the bash profile. I guess now is a good time to talk about it. This lets you kind of control some settings that you want. So if you want to add this to kind of suppress this warning, we can do that. All right, so I'm going to do that, and if there's any questions, please stop me. Let me get some of these windows out of the way.
All right, so let me stop you one more time if that's okay.
Totally
So I went ahead and changed it to bash, put in the password. It's successful. But once again, when I try to, put the code, actual code, it says the same thing, but now with bash instead of the ZSH. So it's bash code command not found.
Gotcha.
Right,
Okay.
Jonathan, can I ask you, did you do the previous step with VS Code where you set up the shell command? Yeah, right there.
Yeah. And it said it was already installed.
Okay. Yeah, we might need to take that offline. If you follow the steps, it should have set it up, but we might need to, double check something.
Okay.
Yeah. So apologies if we can't follow along at that point. But yeah, hopefully most of you guys are able to use the code command. So I'm actually going to edit my bash profile. So bash profile again is just some settings that your bash shell will use, and that's actually located in your home directory. So just take, just kind of copy what I'm writing here. Chad will explain kind of some of these commands a little more in detail. But if I do a CD, a tilde, which is that squiggly thing underneath your escape key, /.bash profile. So I don't want to CD this. I want to code. All right, so I typed code, not CD, tilde/.bash_profile. It should be named exactly that. All right, so I'm going to hit enter on this, and that should bring up a VS Code with my bash profile. So notice that there's nothing in this profile right now. So that means I just created this file. There's no settings in here. So the one thing I wanted to do was, what was that? Okay, so since I'm getting this warning message every time I open up my terminal, I want to suppress it. So I'm going to copy this. Again, we're going to do this several times to make sure you understand how to work with your bash profile. I'm going to copy this command, put it at the top of this, and then I'm going to save this file. So Command S should save it. Notice that dot that was here went away. All right, so I've actually updated my bash profile, but the other thing I need to do is actually source it. So what I'm going to do is go back to my terminal, type source tilde /.bash profile. What this is going to do is actually going to apply the changes that I just made to my bash profile. So first thing I did was change my bash profile, save those changes. Now I actually want those to apply. All right, so I'm going to hit enter, and notice nothing, no error, no message came, which means it's a good thing. So if I actually close my terminal again, let's bring up a new window. All right, notice I don't get that warning message anymore. Again, not sure if all of you guys were seeing that warning message, but I was getting that often, so I actually Googled how to figure that out, and this should suppress that warning message. Not a big deal.
Through VS Code, correct?
What was that?
You have to run it through VS Code and then it will appear in the terminal. You can't just put it directly into the terminal.
You can edit this profile file with any editor. So I just use VS Code if you have any other text editor, but you need to save it and then source it for it to apply. I'm not sure if you.
Sorry, what did you write in the terminal after you updated VS Code. It was source.
Yep. So the first thing I did was code tilde/bash profile. This actually created a file for me if it didn't exist already. So that's the first thing that popped this up. And then the second thing is you type source and then the same file that you want to source. So bash profile. So again, just to kind of highlight what we're doing. First thing, we edited the file and we saved it in VS Code. Again, you can use any text editor, but we use VS Code since we have it. After we save changes, we type source in the same file name. And that's going to actually apply the changes to our system. All right, and we're going to do this several times. So hopefully you get familiar with this process. Let me make that a little larger so you guys can read it.
Yeah, Kurt, could we, is there any way we could like take a minute to get caught up to speed here?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's take a minute. I'm going to kind of read what we're going to do next, but take a few moments to catch up. So what we've done so far is install Visual Studio Code. We installed the code keywords so that we can use it through our terminal. Again, that was through this web page. So hopefully you're able to follow these 3 steps. And it should work. I know at least one of you had issues with that. So hopefully it's not an issue for most of you guys. But this should allow us to use the code keyword in our terminal so that we can launch VS Code using code. And then the other thing we did was set up bash as our default shell. So by default, ZSH is a default shell for Mac. We switch over to bash because that's just what Code Platoon uses. I'm not sure quite the reasoning there, but I'm not going to question it. All right, so just make sure that you see bash at the top of your terminal whenever you open a new window. So I'm going to do that one more time, just for kicks. If I do shell new window, notice that it says bash at the very top. If you've not done the steps correctly, you might still see ZSH, and that means you need to redo these steps.
So Ankur, real quick, so when I pulled up the terminal, it already had bash installed. I do have the default interactive is now that warning.
Okay.
To please run the bin ZSH. I just finished the installation, but when I tried to do the code swiggly /bash _ profile, right?
Mm-hmm.
I keep getting an error message. Yeah, it says user local bin code line 6 and 10 library frameworks Python framework versions 2.7 bin /Python bad CPU type and executable.
All right, that is quite a warning or error message. We're probably gonna have to work on one-on-one with you.
Okay.
Not sure what might be going on there, but yep. Sorry for those that kind of get left behind here, but again, we'll make sure you're good to go by the end of today.
Okay.
All right, so hopefully once everyone's caught up at this point, if not, we're just gonna proceed. Now we're gonna get to Homebrew. So Homebrew is kind of like an application manager for Macs. So that's what we're going to use to install a few items. First thing we want to do is make sure that we have Homebrew installed correctly. So I'm just going to follow the steps and type which brew. Okay, so notice I get user local bin /brew. If you're on an M1, your base file path might look a little different. So just be aware of that. But it should have bin /brew at the very end. So it looks like it matches what we expected. If you don't see this, you need to install Homebrew. So copy that command and run it. But I'm hoping most of you guys have Homebrew installed. I'm going to proceed after you install it, or if you've already installed, just do a brew update and a brew doctor. So I'm going to do that brew update. This can take a little bit of time, so let's kind of let it chill for a bit. This is just going to make sure that everything is up to date. It's doing some stuff. Looks like it finished because I'm back to my prompt. All right, I'm going to do brew doctor. Again, this is all copied from over here. Brew doctor. It's just kind of checking to make sure everything is up to speed. All right, so it looks like I got one warning. It says brew cleanup. Let me take their advice. I'll run the brew cleanup. All right, looks like it did something. So I just typed in a command of clear. That just kind of refreshes your terminal to get you more space. Again, Chad will go over all those fancy commands. But for now, I'm going to do brew doctor again to see if I have any other issues. Okay, so notice I get a message that says your system is ready to boot. Hopefully all of you guys get that message at some point if you fix all the warnings, but that is where we want to get to. So I did brew doctor, my system is ready to boot. All right, next we want to adjust our path for Homebrew. So again, kind of reading all these items, we want to inspect our path. So this is what our system uses to find what it's looking for. So I'm going to type in I'm going to copy over what was on the curriculum page, echo path pipe tr with a new line, and then check out my paths here. So I have user local bin, I have user bin, and then bin. All right, looking at our page here, it says ensure that user local bin comes before user bin and bin. All right, so I think if I look at this correctly, I have user local bin, user bin, bin. So that looks like the correct order. If you don't have that, you'll need to adjust your path. So this is again where the bash profile comes into play. So hypothetically, if my user local bin was not first, I could copy this, go back to my bash profile, which I had open in the background, and I could add that here. So what this is going to do is update the path variable with user local bin and everything else the path variable had. So it's basically prepending my path variable with what I just added here. All right, the important thing is you must keep this path in there or it's going to overwrite what your previous path was. Right, so if you did not have user local bin as the first item or near the top, you can run this export. If I did this, I'll save my file. And again, anytime I make changes to my bash profile, I have to run source bash profile for those changes to apply. Not plus, that's your underscore. All right, so anytime you update your bash profile, as in anytime you save and make changes to your bash profile, you always want to source it to actually have those changes apply. Otherwise, it's going to only apply when you reboot your machine. Okay, so again, this step is optional. It's if your path is not kind of what they show here, you can run it so that user local bin comes before user bin, which comes before bin. All right, assuming that we're good there, let's install any new version of bash. So get rid of this. All right, so I'm going to just following the steps here. This should not take as long as before. So we do brew install bash. Again, this is an application manager, so it's going to look for a new version. If it needs it, it'll update it. So it looks like it's doing something and looks like it finished. So then it take too long. What else we got to do here? Let's use this new version of bash. We need to add it to etc. shells. Okay, I'm just going to follow their steps. Again, I might not know exactly what these commands are doing, but I'm just going to take their guidance. I'm going to copy code in that path, etc. for etc shells, and let's see what happens. All right, so code, etc shells. Okay, so notice it opened a new file for me, and this is what's contained in there. All right, so notice that's what I have currently. What do I need to add? Add user local bin bash to the last line and save. All right, so I'm going to copy that. Go to the last line. All right, so added user local bin bash. I'm going to save this. So notice this dot here means it's unsaved. If I hit Command S. Okay, well, I ran into a small issue here. It said fail to save shells in specific permission. So this is an important file. You need to have admin permissions to do it. So you can retry it as sudo. Sudo stands for super user do. It's just some lingo. But this is your admin permission. So if I retry sudo, it's going to ask me for my password for my machine. So I'm going to type in my super secret password, hopefully correctly. All right, if that is correct, I hit OK. And it looks like it's saved. So if you run it as sudo, again, super user do, that lets you save this file. And once that's done, let's see what I got to do. Now we need to change our shell command. So I'm going to copy this. Go back to my terminal, paste that. All right, so I need to type in my password. This is an admin thing, apparently. Looks like I screwed up the password. Okay, so once I had my correct password typed in, notice I got no error messages, which means I'm good. Okay, so to verify that, we can type in bash -- version. Okay, looks like I'm using 5.18. That is, I believe, the correct version I should be using. If I do echo shell, I should see that I'm using user local bin bash. Okay, looks like it's only bin bash. That is not what I expected. Let me try refreshing my terminal here. All right, there we go. So I refreshed my terminal and now I get user local bin bash. So, yep, that's a step I missed. We can launch a new terminal window and verify our setup. So once you launch a new terminal, you should see 5.18 as your version, and you should see user local bin bash. Again, if you're on M1, your base path might be like OPT, Homebrew or something. Not quite sure what it might be, but hopefully you can follow along. All right, let's go through these next steps pretty quickly, and we'll pause if there's any questions after that. So we're going to install Sqlite 3 and Postgres. Both of these should be pretty straightforward. So let's do Sqlite 3. I guess before I proceed, let me pause to make sure there's no pressing questions here.
So was that error I was receiving that we're going to go over later, is that going to affect this? Because like I was able to download Brew, but then anytime I tried to follow up with the update or Brew Doctor, it just says command not found.
Yeah, that's probably going to hinder you throughout this process. I apologize.
Okay.
But we'll touch base with you for sure.
Yeah.
That error sounds familiar, but I'm not sure how to fix it off the top of my head.
Which version did you say that we needed to have?
The version I had, so if I did, what was it, -- version, I had 5.18. So if you want to verify if you're using the latest, you can just do a quick Google. So if I do bash latest version, let's see what comes up. So it's like 5.1 is the latest. Do I have anything more granular? I don't know. 5.1 is our latest, so I assume 5.1.8 is good enough. Not sure where. Yeah, if you're on 5.1, whatever, you should be good to go. So that's what I have here, 5.18. Okay, so I'm going to proceed on to install Sqlite. This one should be quick. It's one step. Shouldn't take too long. I just anticipate 10 seconds. Okay, looks like I didn't get an error message, so that should be good. If you want to test this out, you could try typing in Sqlite 3. You should be able to get into the application in your terminal. If you don't get that, that means your installation did not go through successfully. All right, so notice I typed in Sqlite 3, and then I got into my terminal-based application here. If I want to get out of this, I believe Control-C should get me out. Yes, Control-C eventually gets me out. All right, so that's Sqlite 3, nothing crazy there. Now we're going to install Postgres. Postgres is our database manager. So this is how we're going to interact with our database using PostgreSQL, I think is the way to pronounce it. So to install that, again, this is when we get to our database portion of our curriculum. We're going to need Postgres. So I'm going to install brew install Postgres. Do its thing. It's working. Okay, none of this looks like error messages, so I think I'm good to go. If you got an error, it probably would be highlighted in red or something, or a warning would be in yellow, but that looks good. All right, so a few more steps for Postgres. So notice that we need to have a server running for our Postgres. So to do that, I need to copy these two steps. Again, the $sign is not part of our command, so I'm going to copy this stuff, and I have no idea what these commands are doing. But again, that's not our goal is not to know what these commands are doing. Our goal is to get everything up and running. Okay, so I ran that. Once I ran that, I'm going to do launch control and copying everything from our curriculum page. Nothing that you need to figure out on your own unless you have errors, obviously. So let me copy that again. Okay, gonna run that. All right, load failed input output error. Now I have seen this before. It is not something I was expecting, but this is an excellent example of when you run into an error, what do you do? Well, the first thing I do is copy that error, go over to my friend Google and say, okay, I was installing Postgres and on a Mac. All right, notice these are my search results. Did I get, I didn't copy my error correctly. So I got load failed 5 input output error. All right, not finding anything I expect. So all right, I'm looking. Installing Postgres. I know I've seen this before. Let's just click on, so this is Stack Overflow. So this is where people ask questions and people respond. So this does not look like the error I was dealing with. So let me, okay, so I got 5 input output error. I didn't quite get that. So I'm gonna back up and try to copy my error again. All right, so I got load failed 5 input output error Postgres. Okay, so I think this is something I've clicked on before, so I probably referenced this before. Yep, this looks like the error I'm getting. So let's see if there's a solution down here. Had the same thing. Looks like people have the same issue. So, okay, this person says they encountered the same error. So that's what I'm getting. I'm going to try copying what they said. So copying this error, I'm going to cross my fingers and see if that works. So I'm going to paste that. Nope, still get the same thing. Okay, so this person said they had to run unload before load. I will give that a try. So sometimes it's just trying a few things and see what happens. All right, so I need to unload something. All right, so let's see if I could figure out what's going on there. So let me try running this command. See if it works.
I'm honestly happy this is happening because it's making me feel a lot more comfortable.
Yep, errors are going to pop up. Again, I have dealt with this before. Honestly, I think one thing I tried is just to restart my machine, which I might have to do at this point, and we can take a break. But yeah, I've definitely seen this error before. Again, Googling eventually found me the result here, but I'm not sure what I did to remedy that before. Let me just try running this again. So yeah, sometimes it's going to take some hard Googling, maybe asking a friend. Yep, still getting that error. So let me see if Postgres actually is loaded. Yeah, so it might be an issue that I already had it installed. I apologize because that's not simulating what you guys went through. But if you're able to type which Postgres, that looks like it installed correctly. I do create DB. Okay, so it looks like my guess is I already had this server running, so it's having some issue killing that server and running it again. If you are able to run this command, then you should be good to go. So I'm going to pause here. If you type in create DB, that's the command, and then whatever name you want, I think underscore should be legal. Don't try to get too fancy with punctuation. But if you're able to create a DB using the create DB, all one word, and then space, and then whatever database name you want to give it, say, Monday, you call it donuts, what do you want to call it? If you run that and get no error message, that means your Postgres and Postgres server are running correctly. Okay, I'm going to assume that most of you guys are good here. So assuming that you were able to run this command, if you're on an M1, you got some other commands to run. The path is a little different. Just keep that in mind. Which Postgres, which piece of SQL should give you these results? I think I ran those, but let's do that for fun. Which piece SQL? All right, I got user local bin piece SQL, which is what I was expected to get. All right, if you run this command, looks like you should get a few entries like this. I ran that before, but we got a few entries again. I'm not sure, honestly, what all of these things are doing. Something related to Postgres, but it looks similar to what I expect out here. So I think I'm good.
Yeah, Ankur, quick question.
Yep.
So if you're not able to, like, if the like code shell command is still installing, you're really not able to do anything else until it completes installation.
The code command, you should be able to get by without that. Again, all the things I did before was just editing my bash profile, and you can do that with any text editor. So you should have some text editor installed. But again, we'll make sure we get everything up and running if you kind of fell behind. I know I moved kind of quickly. Hopefully some of you guys were able to keep pace and install everything. So we just completed Postgres. Sqlite should be done. Postgres should be done. We got a few more things to go through. All right, so create DB, you should be able to create a database. You need to create a database with $user, all in caps. I've already done this again, so I know I'm not simulating this perfectly. But if I do create $user, I'm gonna get some error because I already have that database created. My machine is called Code Platoon, that's why it's referencing Code Platoon. Your machine might be called dmiller or whatever your machine's called. That's what you will see when you do $user. All right, anyone having trouble with create DB $user?
What about if it says no such file or directory?
I'm assuming that means your Postgres was not installed correctly. If your create DB is not creating that.
But I do have Postgres installed. I know that for sure.
Gotcha. That would be something I'm not familiar with. So sorry, what was the error you're getting?
It just says no file or directory when I try to log in with the user with the create user. And it says, is the server running locally and accepting connections on Unix domain socket?
That sounds like your Postgres server is probably not running. So again, we might need to take that offline, but I'm assuming this one of these steps failed for you.
Got it.
Yep. But yeah, thanks for bearing with us. Okay, last thing we need to do, last couple things.
Ankur,
Yeah.
I'm on Linux and I've got the Postgres, like, I don't even remember what you call it, like the header, whatever in the terminal. Whenever I try to either create user or create a database, whenever I press enter, it doesn't actually do anything or say that anything has been done.
Morgan, I can help you with that one.
Right.
I'm going through the same thing now. I figured out that part at least.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, glad you guys are
thank
helping each other out. For the most part, at least on a Mac, I assume it's the same on Linux. If you don't see any message, that's a good thing. So notice when I did, if I do something like, where'd it go? If I do create a new database, let's say create DB Papa Monday, that's a database I've definitely not created before. Notice I hit enter and I get no feedback. That's actually a good thing. So that means it ran this command successfully. All right, let's finish up.
Ankur,
Go for it.
sorry, I have a create DB error mentioned could not connect to database template.
Okay, we'll touch base with you. I think that's pointing to your Postgres not installing correctly or your server not running.
Yeah, that's the same problem I have actually.
Okay, so we got a couple people here. We'll try to group you guys together and make sure we get that resolved. I'm just going to proceed installing the last few things. So Python, we're going to need that for running Python applications. So one thing I want to mention here is that for your Mac already comes with Python installed. However, it is an older version. So the new version should be 3.97. Your Mac comes with some 2.7 version. So we want to make sure we're using Python version 3. So that's something we need to double check here. And I'll show you how we can double check that in a second. All right, so Python installed. Again, I got no errors, it looks like. So I'm going to hit clear. And now I want to actually check my Python version, right? So the way to check your version, I think, just type Python --version. Right, notice I did that and I got 2.7.16. Again, that is the pre-baked in Python version for your Mac. That is not what we want to use for development. That is something that your system uses for running its operating system, so you don't want to delete it, but we don't want to use that for development. All right, so this is where we go back to our bash profile that we've been messing with before. So I have my bash profile open. If you don't, you could definitely open up again, running code ~/.bash profile, but hopefully you kept it open. All right, so to remedy that, we need to add another export. So I'm going to copy exactly what they have here. Again, if you're on a M1 chip, you might need to adjust this path a little bit. All right, so I'm going to add that to the top of my bash profile. I'm going to save it. So if I hit Command S, that's saved. All right, I'm going to run this. Notice I still got 2.716. What do I need to do here that I missed?
Just update it.
How do I update it?
By using the source command.
Yep, Jason's got it. So again, anytime you update your bash profile and you save it, you need to source it. So I need to apply my changes. So I'll do source ~/ all that good stuff, bash profile. Again, this is a file that is in your home directory. So that's what the tilde is doing. It's going to your home directory. So I run this, all right, and then I type in Python --version again. Notice, there we go. My changes actually took place. So whatever export we added, again, I'm not sure what all this magic's doing. It's pointing to the correct Python installation. I assume that's what this is. Now that I did that and I sourced it, now it applied these changes. So now when I type Python, it knows that I want to use the Python I just installed, not the one that was pre-installed into my OS. All right, so definitely make sure that whenever you type Python, you're using the right version. I have had issues with myself and other students where they were using Python, they were running applications that worked fine until it didn't. As in the new version had different features, or the old version didn't support certain features. So there are two ways around it. One way is to do what I just did right now. The other way is you could use Python 3 as your command instead of Python. And we'll talk more about that when we're running Python applications. All right, so we installed Python. A couple more things to do. Hopefully you guys can stay with me. Brew install npm. Let's run that. All right, brew install npm. This is the node version manager. This is what you use to run JavaScript files. Okay, so it looks like I might have cheated. Let me just do the reinstall since that's what they suggest. But if you've not installed this before, you should not get this message. All right, reinstalling npm. Looks like I did it just fine. Again, I don't see any errors in here. I quickly scanned, but it looks good. So I'm going to clear that off my screen. Okay, we got to go back to our bash profile. So again, this is a recurring theme. So hopefully you're not closing your bash profile, but we need to copy in this good stuff. So I'm just going to straight up copy and paste. So capture that E. Try it again. Well, I could just use this copy. There we go, much easier. All right, I'm going to go back to my bash profile. There you are. Let's put it down below. All right, so we're just exporting another variable. This time nvm_directory. It's got all this stuff. Again, I have no idea what it's doing, but I'm not going to care. I'm just following directions here. All right, so I'm going to save that. As we just remembered, we need to source this. So I'll do source. What is it? Sql dash profile. Okay, that should apply these changes. If that worked correctly, I should be able to run npm install 16. This is going to install Node. Node is the engine that will run your JavaScript files on your machine. Just in the same way that Python will be installed Python, we're able to build and execute Python files. Node is what you need to run JavaScript files. All right, so again, mine was already installed. I assume for most of you guys, you've never installed Node before. So it looks like I'm using Node version 16.10. Okay, I'll pause a couple seconds, you guys can sit in case you're installing that. The very last thing we need to do is Git. Can anyone tell me what Git is?
For basically uploading. Well, first you can upload code to GitHub, but it's for what's the word I'm looking for?
I think I could read your mind. I think, are you looking for version control?
Version control, yeah, or repository, version control for your code. So you can make edits to your code and basically save over it, and then you could, fork it, run it back, stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, I think Kevin's got a good high-level understanding of it. So Git is a version manager. What that means is you can create save points, create restore points by using this versioning manager. Like you might think, well, why do I need Git? Can I just create copies of my old files and kind of just like create multiple copies each day, maybe create a copy of your files so they could, revert back to it if you mess up something. That might work for your own cases, but when you get into a team environment, you're going to need some version control environments. So for example, if Kevin and I are working on the same project, we happen to be working on the same file. If I make an edit and he makes an edit at the same time, and we both go to save, well, the question is it going to take his changes, my changes? Is it going to merge them? Well, if you aren't using version control, it's going to take probably the latest changes. As in, if Kevin saves his changes and I save mine, my changes are going to overwrite his. But with a version control application like Git, it will actually be smart enough to know when like multiple changes have been made and can merge them or allow you to merge them so that you don't lose changes with overwrites. Again, so in a team setting, you're more than likely going to be using some sort of version control. Git is probably the most popular used by developers, but there are other version controls out there. SVN is something I've used in the past and I like using it, but again, Git is kind of the industry standard. So that's what we're going to be using here. So I'm going to do a brew install Git, and that should be the last application we're going to install today. I'll let that run. Okay, it's taking a few seconds, but should be done shortly. Okay, looks like that installed, no errors, high five. We got to do a few more things. So, all right, so similar to Python, it looks like Mac OS X ships with Git, but we don't want to use the older version. So that's why we installed our newer version. Let's go through these steps. So we're going to touch, which basically creates a new file. I'm going to post that here. All right, so that should have created a new file. All right, I'm going to copy and follow the directions. Okay. Now you want to set up a Git setup file. So set up your command line username, email, password. So if you click on these links, they should guide you on how to do them. I'm actually going to kind of skip over this because I think we need to wrap this up shortly. But you should be able to follow these steps. Open your terminal, set your Git username. So to do that, you do git config, set your name. So this username should match what you use on GitHub. Right, so it's probably not Mona Lisa, but whatever you use. Likewise for your email and the password you use for your GitHub. Right, make sure no one else kind of obtains that, but you should be able to follow these steps. Once you do that, you should be able to run this command. All right, so I'm going to run that command and let's see what spit out. Looks like nothing. Oh, sorry, I want to run this command. This is what I was looking for. So let's go to that. All right, so when you run this command, git config --global-l, you should see your items here. So it looks like my user email. So I guess username is not my GitHub login, it's just some name. But my email for when I log into GitHub is encore@codeplatoon.org. My password is hashed somewhere, so I'm not gonna obviously expose that, but it looks like everything is set up. So notice that my editor is gonna be VS Code. So I have code as my editor. But again, I know I kind of skipped over those steps, but you should be able to follow these links and set up your username, email, and password so that Git is kind of auto logged into your GitHub. All right, so that was a lot of steps. I know I probably left a few students behind. If you ran into errors or just if I went too fast. Again, I'll upload this lecture after I complete it, and it should be available for your viewing. Let's talk about lectures since we're on that point, and then we'll take a break. So if you go to YouTube, which hopefully many of you are familiar with, you should be able to search for Code Platoon. All right, we have a channel, click Code Platoon. If you go to playlists, that's where you should be able to find all of past playlists, past lectures, as another added resource. So if I scroll through this, November Platoon was what we did in the winter. Oscar Platoon was a platoon just before you guys. So if you're, want to go through their InstallFest, you go to week 1, and then all the lectures from week 1 are contained here. Let me pause that. We have InstallFest, we have command line VS Code, which we're going to do after this. Challenges that we go over. So again, another resource I want you to be aware of in case you want to, view them from past cohorts. Additionally, we go back to the curriculum. So if I go to week 1, each week has a README file. I think I kind of skipped over that, but the README will cover all the high-level topics we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about Git version control, talk about GitHub, obviously talk about JavaScript and Python the remainder of this week, also test-driven development. But each of the READMEs will have a link to the previous cohort's videos. So week 1, if I click on that, it should take me to Oscar Platoon videos. So notice that this is Oscar Platoon week 1. Again, each week will have their own files. We go, let's go week 6 videos. So if we're covering week 6, you have access to past lectures in case you want to kind of get ahead or just need a different lecture to view. Okay. All right. Any questions about InstallFest or the curriculum or anything we went over this morning? Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I had some errors along the way, but
Okay.
I was trying to do some of the other stuff
Sure.
as I could. Is there a possibility that I screwed it up by basically skipping a step and then doing some install, or am I going to run a pretty good chance of getting where I need to be if I just start back at the top of the sheet and go from there?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go back to our scheduling that we're off schedule. We do have time allocated to work on challenges, but this will be the time where if you're having an issue that we said, we'll help you one-on-one, we'll take the remainder of the day to kind of help you guys get up to speed. So yeah, don't worry if you kind of ran into an issue or kind of got left behind. We're going to help you guys each catch up in the remainder of the afternoon. All right, so I'm gonna suggest we take a break because we've been going over an hour. I have 12:18 here. Let's get back at 12. Sorry, I have 2:18 here, 2:19. Let's get back at 2:30, and then Chad, would 2:30 be good for you?
Yep, 2:30 is good.
All right. Thanks so much for bearing with me. All right, so hopefully installations are good. If not, that's totally fine. But be back at 2:30 for command line overview and VS Code overview. All right, see you guys in a bit.
Seems like it makes the most sense. It's in the first case. What did you say we're coming back? One out of 2 out of 9.
Is that like, because I saw that source is like does it, right? So yes. The idea that, I mean, I created an account. So the idea that I'm doing everything well.
Yeah, so Cloud9 again will have all the installations for you, so everything I feel I should all be installed in that Cloud9 installation. And then yeah, you should be able to just be.
Would you recommend that when I have any, because like obviously there's a machine and everybody, when I have any issues you can compare to everyone else using it, or is like.
Again, I've not used the Cloud9 setup, but I know where their VS Code was a little different, because then they didn't have all the many options that I had. That's one thing we have to worry about. But for the most part, again, as soon as I have this Cloud9 setup, I'm totally fine. So
When I still use, when I do everything through Cloud9, or when I use my VS Code on, right?
So Cloud9 will have VS Code, so you can use it through there. You could install VS Code on Windows to use that. It's totally up to you. It's what you think works
I was
best.
gonna say, I have, just really quick, I mean, I'm gonna pull you too much, I know it's quick, but, technically I have, well, I have my Cloud9. Like, I've installed instructions here, but, like I have VS Code, and I have